We've just unearthed the first official footage of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, showcasing daring action, whip-based gameplay, and what I can only imagine is an accurate, true-to-life depiction of archaeology as a profession. Personally, I don't know why we needed to dust off the bones of Jones from whatever crypt they were being stored in, but from the first glimpse we've seen, his great return looks like it might be a refreshing change of pace, opting for a slower-paced, exploratory, puzzle-solving kind of experience. Except, of course, for the one mandatory on-rails heavy machine gun segment, but that's kinda just the tax of modern FPS games. In all honesty, everything about this game should have me rolling my eyes and forgetting it exists. Which is nothing personal, but just reflects on my own taste in action games and classic Lucasfilm franchises. But I'm keeping my eye on this one for one very important reason. It's being made by Machine Games, the developers behind my favorite game franchise of all time, the modern Wolfenstein reboot. The Great Circle looks like a game that relies more on its story and narrative than its gameplay. After all, in the trailer, we only see Indy whip out his gun once at the very end, aside from the mandatory on-rails heavy machine gun segment, of course. To me, there are few AAA developers who could sell me on a game where story is at the forefront of its unique selling point. But Machine Games is definitely one of them. They've got a proven track record of writing killer stories, compelling characters, and crafting gameplay experiences that all revolve around the punching of Nazis. So, if you're hyped for the Great Circle, I have one clear message for you. Play Wolfenstein while you wait. Spoiler alert, this entire video is just gonna be me telling you to play Wolfenstein and why it's good. And I'm right. 100% of the time. For those who are out of the loop, Wolfenstein: The New Order is an alternate history FPS which takes place in a timeline where the Nazis won World War II, thanks to a suite of super technology. They've got giant robot dogs, super soldiers, laser guns, pretty much everything you wouldn't want a fictional or real-life Nazi to have. You play the role of William Joseph Blazkowicz, and you can tell that the game takes its writing seriously by the fact that nobody ever makes fun of the colloquial shorthand of his name, which is BJ. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, and I'm appreciative that they didn't go for that. Blazkowicz is a true blue, Johnny Applesauce, rootin'-tootin' American military captain, leading his troops into battle in the death throes of 1946. He's beefy, he's charismatic, and has enough upper body strength to wield pretty much two of any gun at the same time. Long story short, Nazis happen, shit goes sour, and a grievous head wound leaves him catatonic for 14 years, leading him to wake up in Nazi-controlled Europe in what can only be described as the world's worst isekai scenario. One of Wolfenstein's greatest accomplishments as a franchise is its writing, and this is truly personified by BJ himself. On the surface, he's your typical FPS protagonist. Strong, gruff, yada yada, but throughout the entire series, he's brimming with personality and soul. Blazkowicz's character takes a lot of inspiration from old war poets, with most of his characterization playing out through internal monologues. Even though he spends a lot of time being a dry, gruff, Nazi-killing machine, he's also compassionate, poetic, and deeply traumatized. Everything from the way he interacts with characters in the world around him to how he reacts to the horrors of the Nazis tells you that he's not just a soldier fighting the bad guys, but he also genuinely hates everything that the Nazis represents, and he fights them because it's the right thing to do. Also, he fucking loves his wife. Like seriously, just give Wolfenstein one more reboot and I promise you he'll become one of those sad battle dads like Kratos or Joel. I mean, technically we already have that game, but we don't talk about that one. You could write full-length essays on BJ's characterization, from the way that he's vulnerable, funny, relatable, and how at times he's both a rejection of the notions of toxic masculinity, while also at times being the very embodiment of its consequences. Put simply, he's one of my favorite characters in video game history, and is a testament to Machine Games' ability to write compelling characters. The characters that surround Blazkowicz are also just as memorable. Anya, the medic-turned-communications officer, is far more than just Blazkowicz's love interest. She's a woman who's forced to adapt to a life of war without being a warrior herself. Caroline, the leader of the resistance fighters, is a strong, capable commander who projects authority and charisma despite the wounds of war taking the use of her legs. Max Haas is another testament to Machine Games' character writing, brimming with personality and charm despite being unable to communicate outside of speaking his own name. And Klaus is the only guy with a swastika tattoo who you could ever feel compassionate for. Seriously, the fact that this guy could make me cry, like, that should be considered a crime. And the villains. Jesus Christ. It would be easy enough for this game to say, yeah, these guys are Nazis, and Nazis are clearly bad. But the way these characters are characterized makes you truly, deeply hate them. The characterization of the villains in this series is best categorized with Frau Engel. You have plenty of moments to watch her character play out, both in militaristic and non-militaristic scenarios. And she is just the worst. I don't want to spoil all the moments that made my blood boil watching her, but the best way to describe her character is that she's a Nazi who truly believes in their ideology. She doesn't just do horrible things for shock value or laugh like a supervillain when killing people because she's evil. She truly believes that what she's doing is in service to the greater good. If you were to ask her, at no point would she ever describe herself as cruel, which is honestly the scariest fucking thing a Nazi could do. Outside of the characters, the overall story is also great fun. The plot of Wolfenstein: The New Order is fairly simple. Blazkowicz wakes up in a world run by Nazis, joins the resistance to kill the big bad guy, which you think would be Frau Engel, but it's actually this other guy who only really shows up at the start and end of the game and is only made relevant through flashback sequences, which was kind of an interesting choice, but I digress. Finds himself unearthing an ancient secret society of secret Hebrew super science, fairly standard beats for a game like this. The sequel game, Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, also follows a pretty similar set of story beats, rendering the overall plot of the games, I don't know where I am, but all I know is that I must kill Nazis. The game essentially uses its narrative to cart BJ off to various locations to find a thing, rescue a guy, steal the keys to a U-boat, all while killing every Nazi in his path. Of which, there's a lot of them. Whilst mechanically on the surface, the gameplay can seem a little bit repetitive, the games make up for this by making the locations you travel to visually interesting and brimming with environmental storytelling, while the narrative is compelling enough that you feel like you have enough reason to see through each chapter to the end. The alternate history angle also makes navigating the world fun. Seeing just how fucked up a world run by Nazis is really pushes you to want to kick their asses while dual-wielding machine guns. Everywhere you look, you can see propaganda posters and evidence that these guys are just the worst. Not only to the people they've sworn to despise, but even towards themselves. Every environment you travel in is equal parts well designed and simply harrowing to look at. And the juxtaposition between the towering concrete walls of cell blocks and prison camps to the lush furnishings of military offices and municipal buildings just fills you with a striking sense that everything you're seeing is just wrong. Morally, ethically, as well as functionally and mechanically. Public infrastructure is built from rusting shambles, while anything that props up the military-industrial complex is advanced and pristine, even if it's on the fucking moon. Oh yeah, that's right, you get to fight Nazis on the moon. Have I sold you on this game yet? Speaking of fighting Nazis, the gunplay in combat is tight, fast-paced, and brutal, which makes up for the fact that every level is just shooting down waves of Nazis. Weapon unlocks and upgrades are also paced out evenly enough that you always feel like you've got new toys to play with, preventing things from feeling too repetitive. It's also equal parts challenging and satisfying, even on its standard difficulty. You have to be focused on what's going on around you and where enemies can be shooting you from, otherwise you'll be quickly overwhelmed and killed. However, if you just keep moving and just keep shooting, it's possible to stay on top of the situation long enough that getting your ass kicked doesn't seem unfair. Most levels also have stealth sections, where you can skulk around and take out the Nazis before they even know you're there. This offers a refreshing way to deal with combat, and also gives you an opportunity to really take in your surroundings, which are always incredibly well designed. Or you can be like me, get spotted almost immediately and whip out 2 rotating barrel shotguns and go back to plan A. Put simply, Wolfenstein: The New Order and/or Colossus are both incredible games, and a testament to the work and writing that the Machine Games team can pull off. Even Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, a standalone prequel expansion, is a good time, and despite the critical reception, I also kind of enjoyed Youngblood too, even if the forced multiplayer elements dragged it down, which you can really tell was more of a corporate decision than a creative one. I've really been trying not to be too specific with my recommendations of this game, just so I don't spoil it for those who might have missed it when the game came out. Because the game's a little bit older, you can often find it going on sale pretty cheaply, and pretty frequently as well. Or if you're like me and have the Epic Games launcher installed just so you can pick at the free game they give you once every couple of weeks, chances are you already own it somewhere. If none of my words have convinced you, here are 5 outstanding moments from the new Wolfenstein games in no particular order and with no context. Fighting the KKK vacay at a farmhouse movie set, finally confronting your deadbeat dad, impregnating your wife, the scene where the track Ransacked plays, which is one of the best songs on an already great soundtrack at a moment that I absolutely will not spoil, and Blazkowicz's delivery of the line, "I will gut you standing," which is one of my favorite pieces of voice acting in modern games history. So anyway, long story short, if you're into action, adventure, punching Nazis, and need something to tide you over before Indiana Jones and the Great Circle comes out, play Wolfenstein. It's another banger from the Machine Games team, and I promise you, you won't regret it. Literally, when I saw Indiana Jones was being made by the Machine Games team, I was like, alright, sweet. I have an excuse to talk about one of my favorite games of all time, and I fucking took that opportunity. That should tell you everything you need to know.